happy birthday and Merry Christmas to me. Decided to take a chance a little bit and get some wires. Got these off obviously used, got these off a gentleman on my favorite forum. They look to be in pretty good shape. The splines are definitely worn, but they don't seem dangerously so. The knockoffs are beat up, but again, they're used. They need to be cleaned up. There's a lot of grease and stuff in them. Check them out, but they look pretty solid. Definitely worth the price that I paid for them. By spending $400 per wheel. Only 4 of them, so I'll have to come up with a spare, obviously. But they are 13-inch, but they're a little bit wider than the standard wheels that come on the car. So I might have to go with 175s. I got to look into that and see what recommendations are for the wire wheels. So, yay! Dark in here. Let me shed some light on it. Man, those things are dim. How did these people even see where they were doing? Anyway, I figured out the lights situation, and even though it doesn't look very bright, well, because it's not, but it works. We're going to see if we can't cause some trouble here. I think I'm going to start the car. So I have all the electricals hooked up, got the plugs pulled so that I can turn it over for a little bit. This battery's pretty old. I bought it when I first bought the car, but it hasn't been used that much. It's been charged on and off. I'm not sure that it's going to hold up very well. But all the wires are good. Everything should be good. I don't know if the generator's going to charge. We can figure that out. I don't know if the control box works. So this will be really the first time I've run the car. When I tested it, it was just a basic setup. This will be the first time that stuff is run with everything kind of connected and turning the key. Make sure my tachometer is fully plugged in this time. If you didn't watch the video last time where I snapped the cable because I didn't have it all connected properly. But we're gonna turn it over here, let some oil pressure build up, and like I said, I got the plugs pulled so there's no resistance to the motor. It's just turning over itself. And yeah, crossing my fingers, this stuff always makes me nervous. Nothing electrical connected as far as firing goes. I don't want to send random sparks throughout. The coil's not connected. Battery's connected. Like I said, I don't even know if I'll turn the car over. Let's see what happens. No, it definitely turns over. And I just snapped the damn tachometer cable again. Mr. Tachometer here is broken. I have been vindicated after years and years of upsetting myself because I broke the damn tachometer cable. The gear drive in here is seized. I can't even turn it. So I'll see if I can take this apart real quick. I rebuilt the thing. Maybe I screwed something up putting it back together. Man. Well, I'm not going to worry about the tachometer now. It's definitely seized in there in some way. A bunch of little screws and everything. I'll bring it home tonight and play with it. What I am going to do, believe it or not, when I rebuilt the motor, I did not do a compression test. I know, silly me, totally forgot about it. So I'm going to run through the spark plugs real quick and do a compression test. And if the video ends abruptly, you know that it didn't go well. Compression tests are pretty easy. I got a Harbor Freight, of course, compression tester here. It's like a quick disconnect one, so you got the main hose or whatever you want to call it that this end plugs into the spark plug, and then this end connects through this fitting here to this gauge, and then the gauge bumps up. I'm looking for between 120 and 150 pounds, give or take, and it holds the pressure so it doesn't die off. So you turn the car over 4 or 5 times and let it build up all the way, and then see what you get. The absolute pressure is not critically important. I mean, obviously you want consistent pressure, but more or as important, I guess, is that all of the cylinders are about the same compression. So you just screw this guy in. You don't really have to tighten it anything except but by hand. Alright, I'll just hold it because that's easier. See what we get. Alright, well that's only about 100 pounds. That's not great. Looking for a little bit more than that. All right, number 3. Get about 95 pounds. At least they're being consistent. Can always blame it on the Harbor Freight. Number 2. All right, about 100 pounds. 1 left. All right, number 1. All right, about 95 pounds. Again, lower than I expected, but they're all the same. So if I've got a problem, I've got a problem everywhere, I guess you could say. Happy with that. Compression's good. We'll get the spark plugs back in and then get ready for starting it. Well, I hooked up my ignition and oil lamps, lights, and they're on, and they shouldn't be. So I got to figure that out. I'm a little don't want to burn anything up or let any of the magic smoke out, so I want to troubleshoot that a little bit before I go here. So looking at those lights here, number 3 here and number 12 are those lights. So the only way really that they can be lit is for a path to the battery and then return to ground. So looking at it for stuff that's wired, kind of keying on the ignition switch here, because the battery comes through the negative, comes through that fuse and into the horn, so that doesn't have anything to do with it. It also comes out and goes into the control box, and then from the control box it could potentially and must go from this lead into that and into the ignition switch, and then the ignition switch also goes to the other white stuff where other things will work. So, but when the ignition switch isn't off, that shouldn't have power on it. So I think the ignition switch potentially could be the only thing, or I've wired it wrong. But the car starts when I go to start, so I'm not so sure that I wired it wrong. These are all the wires that went to the ignition switch. These 2 brown ones here are the battery stuff and ignition. The white ones here are what go to the lights in question, and then this red and white one here is what goes to the starter solenoid. With the ignition switch hooked up, no matter what position the ignition switch is in, these 2 are tied together. So that's what's causing that lights to light, because that's where this comes from. However, with it on the bench and nothing connected to it, it's working properly and those 2 parts aren't tied together. So that tells me that I got a short going on, something's going on somewhere, and I would definitely want to figure that out before I start the car. So what I got down to was this wire right here, which goes to the fuse box. As soon as I would touch that to the ignition switch, regardless of the ignition switch position, the ignition and the oil warning lamps would come on. So I knew that was the kicker, the wire there. Something on that line was running the ground. So pulled the fuse right here, this top here, this W and this number 14, that's where that line comes into the fuse box. I pulled the fuse, touched the wire to the ignition switch, and the lamp still came on. So really only one choice after that, and that's 15 and 16 up there. 15 is the coil, 16 is the distributor. So I came over and looked, and sure enough, I had wired up incorrectly, and instead of this white wire going to the coil, I had this white wire go into the starter solenoid. So that was essentially tying the battery to that lamp, or to that wire, obviously, and causing it to provide a path of current and causing the lights to light. So now everything's all better, and probably would not have been able to start the car even if I wanted to. Not a real fancy setup here. I just have the fuel line coming right off the fuel pump, the suction, just off of a little gas can. I didn't I didn't tighten all the connections for the gas tank. I'm not ready to do that yet. Just I don't want gas in there right now. So a easy way to get gas out of it. So that's an original AC fuel pump that I was able to rebuild. And there's a little priming lever right here. So that should suck some of the gas out of this tank, put it into the float bowls. So you essentially tells you to pump that until you feel some resistance. I got the everything wired up. I got to connect the coil yet, but everything else should be good to go, and we'll see what happens. So the fuel pump little thing is pumping, and you can hear it. You hear that little suction but it's not moving any fuel, at least not yet. I seem to remember this problem last time. So I pulled the float bowl lids off, put some gasoline in there, and I'm going to run it directly. Hopefully it'll at least get it started. All right, got the garage door open, got the fan running. I got a little bit of starter fluid. I'm going to cheat. I expect it to start and run, but it probably is not going to run very long because the float bowls may empty themselves out. But a little bit of ether. Well, let's go around, make sure I don't have anything sitting somewhere that it shouldn't be. All the plug wires are connected, coil's connected, hopefully correctly. Yeah, I think that's it. See what happens. Battery might not make it. Or it might. So the ignition light is on, which tells me that the battery's not charging. So that'll be something I have to look into. I didn't really expect it to charge. The exhaust sounds pretty good, actually. Probably gonna die here any minute. Unless it's sucking fuel. That's pretty quiet, actually. Take some temperatures real quick, make sure I don't have any problems. Yeah, there it went. So, out of gas. Fuel pump's not moving stuff. But, not too bad. Alright, so, well, I know she runs at least. Starts up pretty much right away. Makes me feel good that at least it's I didn't do any damage to it while it sat for 2 years. Well, I'm going to take my chances here. I got the car up on jack stands and the jacks under it. I'm going to fill the float bowls back up since that doesn't seem to be working for me today. So I'm going to go ahead and sit down, start the car up, and get it in gear and see what happens. I hate sitting in the car on jack stands, but it should be fun. Well, the clutch is not engaging very well. It's just noisy in these things, I guess. Clutch needs to be bled. Got some drips that I can see through the transmission tunnel here. So I'm going to shut it down. The temp's coming up, so that's good. You can hear it kind of running better, warming up. Sounds like the fuel has also fixed itself. I don't think it'd be running that long if the fuel pump didn't finally decide to start working. That's a beautiful thing. No weird noises. Granted, it's not under load. No weird noises coming from the diff. No weird noises coming from the transmission. And yeah, so I'd call that a successful preliminary test. Oh, then I put the commission plate back on today. So it's a little little bowed, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was. So that's another little mini milestone. All right, that's all I got.